Hello, my name is Sarah Davidson Squibb. I want to welcome you to this workshop on using images with confidence. We're going to be using a library guide today. And so first of all, I'm just going to show you how to get there from our library's website. If you visit library.ucmerced.edu and go under the search box to research guides, you can click that and just search for images. And this is going to bring up using images with confidence. So I'm going to click on that link. And here we are at our workshop outcomes. So the goal for today is really to help you locate usage and licensing information on images, find images for things like course projects, and to interpret any usage information that might be on images, especially licenses such as Creative Commons licenses, which are pretty common. Now, the main reason you're probably interested in this workshop really comes down to a couple of these questions. One of them is, how can I be an ethical user of information, including things like images and photographs? How do I know if I can use an image in my work, if it's appropriate? So a little bit of background information about what may be happening with images that you want to use. First of all, those images could be copyrighted. That means that their use would be restricted. And at a minimum, you usually have to get permission from the creator of the object, the rights holder, or maybe like a licensor who has that authority. And sometimes beyond getting permission, there will also be payments that are required in order to legitimately use that source. So that can be one scenario. Another scenario is that an image may be assigned a license of some sort. That license may allow for certain usage. And some common licenses are known as these CC licenses or Creative Commons licenses that will tell you appropriate usage. And I'm going to say more about what those licenses look like. A third scenario may be that images are in the public domain, meaning that they don't have restrictions around their use. And some items are older and they end up coming into the public domain. Other items might be assigned what's called a Creative Commons Zero license, in which the person who creates the item designates it or says, hey, I am placing this into the public domain for use without restriction. So we're going to go over to this terminology tab. I'm not going to land or explain more terminology at this point, but these may be terms that you want to come back to or reference at a later date. So let's go on to Creative Commons licenses. These are the ones that I'm saying can be quite common, as in its title. I'm going to click on this Creative Commons licenses link. This will just take you to their main web page where they have a lot more information about these licenses. To try to summarize those licenses in a nutshell is to look at the 4 elements that make up Creative Commons licenses. Those 4 elements can be used sort of in combination to make up 6 licenses. So the first of those 4 elements is the attribution or by element. The attribution element means that when someone uses that information, so again, say it's an image, they have to give attribution or credit to the person who created it. And something that's really interesting is that all 6 of the Creative Commons licenses require attribution. A second element is the non-commercial. In Creative Commons licenses, someone may say, hey, what I created can only be used for non-commercial purposes. A third element is what they call the no derivative works. Someone can also say, I don't want my work to be modified or changed in any way. And in that case, they would be signaling a non-derivative works as part of their license. And the fourth element is the share alike. This means if an image or something is allowed to be changed or modified, then the new work that is created also has to receive the same license, meaning someone can't basically lock it down at that point. So these four elements, which are represented by four different graphics, are kind of comboed together to then make these 6 available licenses. You will see these licenses sometimes represented by these graphics. Sometimes you will just see them represented by basically the text of them. So this license, the CC Creative Commons license by, if someone chose this license for their work, they're saying you can use this. The only restriction on it is that you need to credit or give me attribution. That's what the by is going to be. And if we click on this, I've linked over to the Creative Commons site, which just gives you some more information. It says, hey, if you're looking at something with this license, you are free to do the following. You can share it, you can adapt it. However, you must give the attribution. So I'm not going to go through all of these licenses in detail, but let's just kind of look at one more. Here's one that has the attribution. And then it says it can't be for commercial stuff, non-commercial. So it has this Creative Commons by non-commercial. And again, this tells you what you are free to do. You must give attribution, and you can't use it for commercial purposes. So those are the 6 main licenses. Creative Commons also has these public domain designations, which I've mentioned a little bit. So the CC0 means someone decided not to reserve any rights, so they're making it available for others without restriction. And there's also the public domain mark, meaning some items might be tagged and said, hey, no known copyright on this. This is something libraries and archives might use. They might say, hey, it looks like, or we know that there's no copyright on this, and they're making it very visible to those who might want to use the items, that it's in the public domain. So you'll see those designations as well. Under that, I've put a link to this Creative Commons chart, which is on a posting from George Mason University. I also really love this graphic because it again shows these graphics for the licenses and tells you what is allowable and what is not allowable. And this can be useful both as someone who might be creating information or someone who wants to use information. And then the last piece on this page, I did put this graphic, which is available from the Creative Commons. It shows you the spectrum from the least restrictive licenses or the most open licenses through to the least open or the most restrictive. So you can see that this public domain Creative Commons 0 is the most open. That won't be any surprise to us, followed by the attribution. And then it goes all the way down to the least open, where non-commercial, you can't make derivatives, you can't modify or make changes. So we're going to see some items today that have a Creative Commons license on them. So I wanted to share that with you, and you can always come back to this as a reference. So let's move over into some image examples, because I think this is where it gets a little bit more challenging sometimes to find out, does an image have a license on it, and are there any restrictions? So I'm going to try to run through some of these fairly quickly. I've pulled out some sample images that live in various spots. And as I go to them, we're going to be asking these questions, what usages are permitted? Is there any licensing information that gives us insight into those usages? I'm going to click on this Mount Fuji illustration. This is coming from a website, Pixel True. It's kind of interesting. The graphics are super beautiful. But when I came here initially, I was trying to get my bearings around, like, what can I use? Can I use things legitimately, etc., for like a website or a PowerPoint presentation, etc. So on this main page, you can see a lot of graphics. You can see that they have a little bit of text. And I honed in on this statement that says free for commercial use without attribution. However, it also has a buy this pack. So it looks to me like this is something where it's a pay source in order to get those items. I think I poked around. Let me go to this graphic here. I'm going to click on Valley. I'm going to go save file. See how far this goes for me. Went up to the top. So this is kind of interesting. So I can actually open and download this, but because of what the website is telling me, I'm actually a little bit leery about using this in something that's like outward facing. I might be a little bit more interested in using it, at least if I gave attribution. So you can sometimes run into websites where it's a little bit challenging, or we might have to do some more digging to see if we could use something. And when I'm at this website, I also haven't, gone in and looked much more thoroughly. Okay. So they do have some free illustrations. Sometimes you'll see websites where some things are free and some things aren't as well. So we won't spend any more time on this one, but it kind of illustrates that sometimes it can be a little tricky to really find things and you might have to do some digging. I'm going to go to the second one. This is an image hosted at something called Openverse. So I'm at an image, and this is one where I find the license information, and they are actually using a Creative Commons license. So they have buy, non-commercial, share alike. And they've actually expounded on that license, which is kind of helpful. They said, hey, you have to credit the creator, which you have to do for all Creative Commons licenses. Only use for non-commercial purposes. If you adapt, you have to share any adaptations under the same terms or under the same license. But I at least like that this is clear, and they're even giving you the option of language to help credit the creator. So I really like that as well. So this is pretty clear, and it's using Creative Commons. I'm going to open another one. This is from a different website. The image, they named it, well, maybe I named it. No, here it is, 2 test tubes. And this is, again, I'm on this page. I'm kind of trying to get my bearings around, can I use this? Is there licensing information? So in the upper right, they talk about license. I notice underneath the image, they said free to use, and I think this is a hyperlink. So I click on that. It looks like it's taking me to a license page, partly because it's saying legal simplicity. They said we're trying to keep our license simple. So they're free to use. They actually say attribution is not required. So this is not a CC license. But giving credit is, while not necessary, is always appreciated. It even says you can modify photos and videos, be creative, and edit them. Okay. And then if you go farther down, it tells you what is not allowed. So you can't sort of take their photos and then start selling them, for instance, which makes sense. So that's a pretty lenient license. It's kind of nice, but I like that it's simple and it's out there for you, so you know what to do with that image. I'm going to go into another one now that is from a collection called Callosphere. Callosphere is actually hosted by the University of California, and it brings together a lot of images and documents from different collections in California. So University of California collections, but there's also like public library collections, etc. Now here is an image from the 1984 Olympics. And for this one, you know, all the images in Callosphere don't necessarily have the exact same license, and that's where it can also get tricky. So I'm going to scroll down. I'm going to look for license or rights information. And right away, it looks to me like this is not going to be something that's just easily available for use. It says images are available for reproduction and use, but it's talking about ordering stuff. So if I go to this URL, I expect that there is going to be a cost for use of this. So they're saying images in the photo collection are for personal use only. If you're going to publish it or do something else with it, you have to have written permission. And then depending what else you want, like if you're using it for commercial, but perhaps even a nonprofit application, there could be fees involved. So that might not be for every item for sure in Callosphere, but for this coming out of the Los Angeles Public Library photo collection, there are some restrictions. The next thing I'm going to go into is a map, and this is found in DPLA.org. DPLA is the Digital Public Library of America. It's a pretty cool search tool. Again, it's bringing in a lot of sources from libraries all across the United States. So here's an image, and here is a Creative Commons license using the graphic. So we can see pretty easily what are the restrictions on use. You have to give attribution. It can't be used for commercial purposes. If it was modified, it would have to be shared alike with a license. So that is really helpful to us. I'm also going to pull out an image, which is basically just an icon. Again, sometimes people want to use these types of things for projects. And it looks like it's giving me a cookie message. But for this, again, I'm kind of looking around because I see that there's stuff about pricing. But here's some information on the right about the Flaticon license. It says free for personal and commercial purpose with attribution. So attributions there, they're not necessarily using a CC license, but they're giving you some restrictions or parameters around how you can use it. And we have a couple more here. This is another image that's coming from a collection that's curated. It's from the New York Public Library, one of their digital collections. So I'm going to pop over into that. And I will say that sometimes, again, it's hard to get your bearings or to find the information about the image. And this one, it took me a little while because there's, you know, headings and print and other thing going on here. But for this image, it's telling me that it is free to use without restriction. And if I click on that, it looks like it's giving me, you know, maybe some more guidance. And this is going to be another situation where not everything in the New York Public Library's digital collections is necessarily free to use, but you're going to be looking for information about it to see if that's possible. And then I'm going to pull up a vector graphic out of another website. Some of these websites are not that fun because you're getting, you know, sort of ads and things on them too. But here's a clock vector. This may also make it a lot harder to find out whether or not I can use this. Now it says public domain vectors. And if I click on this public domain, okay, so it says vector images in this website are bound to Creative Commons DEED CC0. So they're using the CC0. So you can use them even for commercial purposes without asking permission. Again, though not required, a link back to public domain vectors is welcome. So in a sense, they're like attribution is nice, but it's not necessary. Okay, so we ran through some sample images. You can see there's a really broad range of how they're formatted, how they might look, how you might find them. So that's kind of our first look at examples. I'm also going to try to do a quick dive into just more broadly, like image collections in general. These we went into very specific items. We're going to pop into some sample collections to also just see if they provide us some like general licensing information, or again, if it's item specific. We're also going to see in these collections if there are opportunities to limit to a specific license type in our searching. So I'm going to pop into something called pixabay.com. Pixabay has photos, illustrations, vectors. You can log in, but I think you can also use items without necessarily having an account. So I am going to search just for a keyword. They are putting sponsored images up top, so these are not really part of Pixabay. But if I was interested in this image, I could click on the road landscape. It's sort of telling me the username or who provided this image. It says free download, and then it says Pixabay license free for commercial use, no attribution required. And as far as I know, if we went to other images in Pixabay, this is typically the license that you're going to see. So not much in the way of restrictions, but I always tell people in Pixabay, just look at the image for the Pixabay license. Unsplash is sort of a similar type of site for finding images. They're telling you it's freely usable images. Let's try Chinese New Year. Okay, and again, they're putting like iStock stuff at the top. It's probably part of their business model, but I'm going to click on this image. And again, I'm looking for any licensing information. This says free to use under the Unsplash license. And if I click the Unsplash license, it's going to give me more details. All photos can be downloaded and used for free, both for commercial and non-commercial. No permission needed, although attribution is appreciated, and then what is not permitted. So again, this is a pretty lenient license for what look like most, if not all, of the images in Unsplash. And I like that this license is also very simple. We aren't kind of guessing what we can do. With that in mind, I'm going to go into one that's pretty much a complete opposite. This is the Associated Press AP Newsroom. This is a database that we as a library subscribe to. I'm doing this from an off-campus location right now, so I'm connected to the VPN to get into it. If you were on the campus location, you can just click into it without the VPN. So the AP Newsroom has a lot of images in it, but their licensing is going to be more restrictive. So I'm just going to click on this image, just something from the Winter Olympics right now. And it looks like there, is a download option. I'm kind of looking over here to see if they have anything about licensing, which I'm not seeing anything offhand. If I start to download it, I do see that is talking about restrictions for educational purposes only. And they have a terms and conditions page, which has a lot of sort of legal sounding language on it. But it does talk about the content elements, including photographs, are the exclusive property of AP or its licensors. So this is looking extremely restrictive, even though you can technically download images out of here. So just something to keep in mind. Okay, let's just do these 3 more. Flickr, which some of you may be familiar with. It's been around for a while. Often people will upload a lot of photos into Flickr. Again, you could create an account, but not necessarily have to have one. I'm just going to search for California. Very broad search. I'm going to click on, let's take this image and kind of see what we have for licensing or rights. And I'm noticing on this one, it has a copyright symbol and it says all rights reserved. So this is looking very restrictive for this image. This is actually telling people how to change their license. But that one is more locked down in terms of how you can use it. Now, Flickr, I'm going to go back to the search. It defaults to searching for any license. This is a search tool where you could say that you want it to search just like Creative Commons licenses or no known copyright restrictions, etc. So I might decide I want to select that instead. And that's going to switch up what I have a little bit. Let's try this Santa Monica photo. Okay, so then this one's a little bit different. It's giving us some rights reserved, and it's actually going over to a Creative Commons license. So the things are going to vary in Flickr. At least they have that option to sort of filter or say what you want removed, because maybe you just don't want to see those things that are really restrictive. I also put in here Google Advanced Image Search, because I think a lot of us sometimes come across images in Google. And, oh, what should we search? I don't know. Let's see what I get with Central Valley. Okay. So with something like this, I'm going to try going to this image, Central Valley. I'm going to visit this site. Now, it probably didn't catch it, but it said this may be under copyright. And a lot of websites, they won't necessarily just tell you, like this graphics here, it's not saying, you know, all rights reserved, etc. And I don't think this is taking me to another image. I would probably be assuming at this point that it is copyrighted or rights are reserved. I would probably be, you know, emailing someone at this site to see if I could use it, for instance, if that was something I wanted to use. Now, Google Advanced Image Search will also let you under more, no, it's not under more, under tools to go to usage rights, and you could select Creative Commons licenses here. It's a little bit hidden, but that is available to you. And I'm noticing now in the search results, we're getting a lot of things from wikimedia.org. Something's coming up from Flickr that we were just at. Pixabay, which we were also at. Raw Pixel. So sometimes I find it search is not always accurate with the usage or permissions, but this could be another way to find things. This one's taking me to an image on this Raw Pixel site, but you'll notice this one is designated as public domain as a free Creative Commons 0 image. So this could be used, which is kind of nice. And again, it's linking over to the Creative Commons designation. So that's something to be aware of in the Google Advanced Search. that under tools, you have that usage to Creative Commons licenses. And then ArtStore is another database that we subscribe to as a library. So again, I would need to be on the VPN. ArtStore, when you get started with it, you normally are going to register for an account, but we do have this affiliated with your single sign-on. Let me just log in and let me X out this message at the bottom. And I'm going to just go over to advanced search for a moment. And let's see, I'm just going to search for Mona Lisa. Click search. A lot of this is going to, again, be things from museums, a lot of sort of like famous art, images of objects. And what do I want to choose in here? I'm going to choose this. So this database can be used by professors who also want to put together presentations about art. It's like, you know, allowing some of those educational uses. But when you go to an image, you can often find the rights information. So this one says this image is under copyright, etc. And you may have to look more closely at the terms and conditions around this. So this, again, is typically going to be much more restrictive because of what's in there. So I hope that those examples kind of give you a sense of a strategy when you're locating images to look for the license, what information is available. And if you see those Creative Commons licenses, you have a better sense of how to interpret those. I did include a page on this guide that says finding images. I just put a number of websites and a brief annotation around each of those. I put a heart by Pixabay and Unsplash because sometimes if I'm just looking for sort of a generic image for something, those tend to be a couple places I go to first. I also included the AP Newsroom, ArtStore, and these other collections we were in, Callosphere, the New York Public Library's digital collections. They have a lot of fabulous stuff. And the DPLA, in case you wanted to get back to those or take a look at them. So I hope that was helpful and that you do feel like you have a better sense of finding usage and licensing information, that you have some places to go to find images for projects, and that you can interpret information, including those Creative Commons licenses for usage. If you have any questions, I hope you'll be in contact with me. You can email me, you can schedule an appointment, you can chat on our 24/7 chat service, but I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you for joining me, and I hope you just have an excellent day.